Yep. Hey, good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Gene.
Good to see you. We are doing this for the first time, so there will be lots of trial and error. So let's just roll with the punches and see where we land with this. We both agreed that we shall go with this short discussion. Uh, so the title we're going to use going forward, right, is From Component Teams to Feature Teams. What's better, slow expansion or all at once from start transition? So this is really how we frame today's conversation. So let's share our thoughts on this, and probably those that will be watching us, they should both know that we are U.S. based large scale Scrum coaches and trainers, and we are basing our views on our experience of um, working with various organizations doing uh, large-scale Scrum adoptions through organizational design and system thinking. So, what are your thoughts on this? Could you please share your thoughts on this?
So, my case study speaks to this quite a bit, and I'm a very strong believer that you're much, much better off, starting with feature teams, at least for, one requirement area, just as Les would prescribe. And that is definitely the best way to start. The real challenge is, can you get that buy-in? And if you try to get that buy-in up front, does it blow back versus sort of slowly, organically trying to use the buy-in that you currently have, create teams that are extended component teams that are as close to true feature teams as possible, and then try to slowly grow. Now, that is what I did in the case study, but we certainly suffered from it because of that. And so what I don't know is whether I had the wisdom and judgment and the skill set at the time to do something that would be comparable to a certified less for executives course where you have an informed consent at the end and you really get all of the senior management to understand the why and really be bought in. Had I done that more effectively, would I have been able to have started with a much broader, with a more proper product boundary? Or would I simply have been kicked out the door because this is way too radical? And I don't know the answer. And I do know that Boss and Craig seem to be on each end of this spectrum. So I don't know what the right answer is. I know what I did. And I know the challenges of my failure to have done the upfront. But had I gone the other way, I don't know what would have happened.
Just a quick clarifying question. This is really your time to speak. When you say, I guess when you were explaining this slow expansion, gradual expansion, do you mean gradually adding people to the existing component teams with complementary skill set, or making existing component experts to learn more as you go? How
So I
exactly
mean, when
define
you
this?
define your initial product boundary, or what may actually be a frustrated product boundary that's really an extended component boundary, you obviously want this to be as vertical as possible and go through all of the components and have real customers be the interface to which this offering is being delivered. And but you sometimes end up with, well, you're not a component team. You're actually multiple components, but you're not quite going all the way up to the end customer to the extent that you know that you should. But perhaps political constraints prevent you from doing otherwise. So do you practice the art of the possible, or do you simply spend your energies, at another company? Do you say this isn't worth trying? Does that answer your question? But you still want to start with, more than one team. You want to start with, half a dozen teams or so.
Well, I think I understand where you're coming from. For our future watchers and audience, hopefully there will be some people interested in this conversation. Maybe additional clarification would be useful. Like say, so in large scale Scrum, we recommend starting between 2 to 8 teams. Say you have 7 or 8 teams. Would you expect them all to be cross-functional feature teams, aka I would call them product teams as well, because they work on the whole product, or as wide as we can define a product? Is that from a get-go?
Certainly. So even in my case study, when we formed up our teams, and really I would say that when the people self-selected which teams they were going to be in, they did so under the constraint that each team had to be as independently capable of doing the testing, doing the development across the various components they were going to touch. That was true from day one. Now, it is true, of course, that it took them time to, strengthen those muscles. So it's not as if you end up with a perfect set, but you certainly start out with as cross-functional and cross-component of teams as possible, even at the individual team level should be that way.
You got 20 seconds. I'm happy to give you my 30 seconds just to, if I were to ask one clarifying question. So what would be the slow expansion given the frame that you just gave? So you do kick off with the, as cross-functional as much as you can, 2 to 8 teams. So what would be the gradual expansion in that regard? Further expansion?
You would be slowly trying to work your way towards the surface and going through additional components and expanding your team capability. Or the reverse might be, maybe you already are at the surface and you're trying to go deeper and deeper and deeper, so there's not a single element of the code base that relates to the type of functionality you build that the teams don't have the capability to do.
All right. Good. Thank you. So clarified for me and hopefully clarified for others. Let me give you my 2 cents on the same subject, and I'll try to, maybe decouple. I have 2 separate points to make. First, clearly, as we go to product-centric development, as we gradually embrace product-centric, customer-focused development, and we did this with cross-functional feature teams, aka product teams. Ideally, I would like to see organizational structure and team structure to be put in place from a get-go, meaning that as much as possible, we have each team fully capable working through the whole stack of what we define today, currently, as a product. It could be a limited product definition, granted, and that's my second point, but that I'm about to make. But certainly, if a team Zulu works on this even limited product, we wish at least to have from a get-go it being able to work from soup to nuts, which means everyone on that team should be able to do a little something, like maybe M-shaped developers better than T-shaped developers or somewhere in between, but at least the whole team should be able to work from soup to nuts. Now, if we don't do that, if we try to enter this with teams that are asynchronous in their capabilities and skills, Team Zulu versus Team Gamut versus Team Alpha, doing their separate things, and then hoping that miraculously somehow they will start learning from each other. It's not going to fly, and we have seen this movie before, right? Yeah. They all will be focused on their work, on their cup of tea, and if they're managed by line managers and first, second level managers, they will be most likely focused on what does it get to me, what puts food on my plate at the end of the year, especially if it's a large bank. Chances of them gradually growing into another skill, another capability, are extremely low. And I would like to make the second point, kind of now better understanding what you were saying. Say we do have a product definition that is, wider than a single component, but certainly not as wide as we would like it to be, because let's say we work for a very large organization, a huge bank or an insurance or pharma, and there are too many components to touch by a single team. So say we have 8 teams, and each team was a component team, single function specialty or a component team. Then we would have 7 points of asynchronous dependencies to manage. Very, very, very tough. And of course, we would justify it by, hey, We have very skilled coordination managers and integration managers and capability managers and RTEs and blah blah, you name it, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Useless.
so that's useless. So maybe today it's tough for a single team to work across all those 20 components. And probably that's the point you were trying to make. How about we take these few teams and encourage them to learn these 4 or 5 components, and the other teams, another few teams, learn another 4 or 5 or maybe 6 components. So now instead of having 7 points of asynchronous dependencies, you will have maybe 2 or 3 because there is so much more overlap between the teams that know each, more than just one component, and gradually through mentorship and through community support, they will be learning from each other, and we have other mechanisms to leverage in large-scale Scrum. So certainly, I don't want to think this of as like always has to be a binary switch, all or none, but at least I would like to be realistic about this. If we have 8 teams, or worse yet, 28 teams, each one doing their own little thing, probability that somehow miraculous they will start learning from one another while reporting their own spheres of control and jurisdiction and management are pretty much slim to none. And those agile transformations, they think, oh yeah, we're going to do it in phase 5. We know where they're coming from, right?
Yeah.
Not on my clock, not on my watch, not until I get my bonus. I think I'm out of time in 5 seconds, and perhaps we shall make this short and sweet for our audience. Go ahead. What
so to summarize, I think, Gene, you and I are on almost exactly the same page. It's almost as if we're both LeSS trainers.
As if.
And there is just as is one of the LeSS rules, you need to do this up front from day one. When you form the teams, you need these cross-functional, cross-component teams where each team is able to do this, even though they're working on the same product backlog. You want your product definition to be as broad as possible within the constraints that you have. And then, as you pointed out, Gene, there is a nuance that you might have 8 teams, and the reality is that with the people that you started with, maybe 4 of those teams have an affinity for certain kinds of work, and other teams have an affinity for other kinds of work. It's as good as you could achieve it's not as good as you could achieve. It's as good as the people that are members of the team that during self-organization, when they decided what teams they were on, this is the best that they believed was achievable. And so will be that nuance. And then, of course, the wonderful part is that because the structure has been aligned over time, there will be all the incentives in the world for them to continue to become increasingly cross-functional and cross-component, even more so than when they started.
Good.
So,
by the way, we're doing amazingly on time. Hopefully that's a good kickstart for us. Speaking of incentives, Bax to make a comment. Unless people are properly incentivized, properly positioned and supported organizationally, all the way up and through HR level, all of this could be just nice talk without much outcome. So in order to materialize on these great ideas, we need to create organizational dynamics that are supportive of this.
yes.
So from HR and human perspective, we need to make sure people see this. There's something in them, including career path, compensation, and promotion, etc. And also on product centricity and product definition side of the house, if we leave budget and finance outside of this conversation, or until phase 5 of our agile transformation, we'll be still spinning wheels and doing projects and programs, because those are not decoupled, not independent matters. So perhaps we will have enough information to entertain our watchers, listeners for the first time. Hopefully we can wrap this up. If they're interested in anything deeper than that, they can either pick you up or me on the World Wide Web and maybe attend our courses or just ask for references. Do you have anything to add to this?
No, that's good. This has been great, Gene.
Excellent. All right, we'll pick another interesting topic next time. Great chatting with you, Gene.
Maybe people will put some interesting topics in the chat for us.
Yep.
So that would be even better.
Pool.
So.
Excellent. That's a great idea.
Good to see you again, Gene.